And we are back. What is up, everybody? In the last video, we created the chat model and the chat message model. And in this video, we'll finish up our chat's view. We're going to create these cells here. We're going to do it in two parts. First, we're going to start with just the base UI. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the loading of the cell, because this cell actually loads asynchronously. These cells, when the screen loads, we have all the data. So we were able to do it with one layer. For these cells, we're going to have to load some of the data inside the cell. We're going to do it with two layers. I'll show you guys how to do that. Let's get started with just the base UI layer here. And again, I'm going to put it in our components folder with the views. I'm going to right click and create a new file from template, and it will be a SwiftUI view. Even though we are making this cell fully reusable, I'm still going to call it the ChatRowCellView. Just so that I remember what UI this actually is. Realistically, I'm only going to use it for chat rows right now. I can always rename it to like custom row later, but ChatRowCellView is more than fine for our purposes and this app. Let's start building. Just like all of our other cells, we're going to have an image name. Let's make it an optional string and set it equal to constants.randomImage for now. We're also going to have a headline of type string. Whether or not you want to call it title, subtitle, or headline, subheadline, doesn't matter to me. We'll use headline in this cell. Headline, and I'll set this equal to alpha for now. We'll make a subheadline of type string, and I'll set this equal to this is the last message in the chat. So when we build these cells, so this will be the chat that you have with the avatar. This is going to be the avatar's name, and then this will be the last message in the chat. So whether the avatar said it or whether you said it, the last message will just appear here. That's what the subheadline is going to be. The reason I'm calling it subheadline and not last chat message is in case we decide to go and reuse this cell for something else. In that situation, it probably wouldn't be the last chat message. Lastly, we're going to put a little tag on the right side whether or not the user has a new message in that chat. And for this, I will just name this var has new chat of type bool equals true. So slightly coupled to what a chat actually is, but not so bad that we're going to have problems in our code base trying to reuse this. You guys can go ahead and try to build this if you want. We're going to have a parent H stack here. On the left, we'll have the image. We'll clip it to become a circle of a V stack with the headline and the subheadline, and then we'll have a little bit of text here with a blue background. As I'm creating this course, I have no idea how many of you actually want to go and build these cells yourself. I did it once on my YouTube channel and got pretty positive feedback that most people liked it. That's why I keep doing it. Sorry if that is annoying some of you guys. Let's go ahead and build this. Let's make an H stack, and we're going to add some spacing of 8. On the left side, we'll create this image. We'll make a Z stack, and we'll say if let image name, else. Remember to do the else this time. So if we have the image, we'll put an image loader view with the URL string of the image name. And if not, we'll just put a rectangle for now. Let's do fill.secondary.opacity 0.5. Let's make this a fixed frame of 50 by 50. And then let's clip shape and clip it into a circle. Great. On the right of that, we're going to have a V stack. Let's use the alignment option enter. Alignment to the left edge with spacing of 4. At the top, we'll say if let headline, and then we'll say if let subheadline. You already guessed it. We're going to put some text on the screen that says headline. And we're going to put some other text on the screen that says this subheadline. The headline will have a font of, you also guessed it, headline. And the subheadline will have font of subheadline. Let's give the subheadline a foreground style of secondary so that it's gray, a little less important. And then let's push it to the left edge. So just like we did in the last cell here, I'm going to do a .background of color .green, and then let's frame max width infinity, and then we'll align to the left edge of that frame. Lastly, all the way on the right, we're going to have a if has new chat, If there is a new chat, let's go ahead and put some text that says new. I will capitalize the letters there. Let's give this a background of color.blue, and I'll make sure that this is blue in both light and dark mode. Because it's got a blue background, we're also going to give it a foreground style of color.white, so that the text is always white on a blue background. Let's give this a font of caption to make it a little bit smaller, as well as making it bold to make it thicker. And then before the background, let's add some padding. So let's go padding of horizontal, maybe 8, and padding of vertical of 6. Looks pretty good. Last but not least, my favorite view modifier, the corner radius. Let's go ahead and make that 6 so it pops out. Last thing I'm going to do is put padding. I'm going to put the padding outside of the cell. This way I can customize it depending on the implementation. Because the padding on this screen might be different than padding on another screen. But this is looking pretty good. Let's update the preview with a couple more examples. So let's make a Z stack here. And let's go ahead and make the background color.gray, ignore safe area. And then we'll put a V stack on the screen, and we'll put a couple of these in there. There's no background on the cell. We could use the list row background, but I'm actually just going to match the background to the list row color, again, in case we use this not on a list row. So let's go and take the background of the whole cell, and we'll go .background. And the default system background is a color from the UI color scheme, and we'll go .system background. Great. This VStack, let's kind of mimic what it's going to look like on the actual list here. We could use a list in the preview. Maybe we should use a list in the preview. See what that looks like. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And we'll do remove list row formatting on each of these. All right, so now that actually looks kind of ugly. Let's give it some padding before the background there. We'll give it padding of vertical, let's do 12, and padding, let's do some extra horizontal of 8. That looks more appropriate. In the second one, we'll do has new chat of false. This one we'll do image name of nil, and then let's do just 2 more. Let's do, this one will be the headline is nil, and this one will be the sub headline is nil. Not that we're going to use all these variations, but it's nice to just see them all listed here. But maybe a couple of them has new chat as false as well, just to change it up, and that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and try to use this on our actual screen now. So we're actually going to go to the chats view and try to implement a ChatRowCellView. Let's go to the chats view. And so for each chat, we then want to put on the screen ChatRowCellView. Option enter, triple click, control M. Now the image name we want to put on the screen here is the avatar image. This is going to be the avatar image, and this is the avatar name. Additionally, the subheadline we want to be the last chat message. So the data model that we are looping on here is the chat model. When I go and I look at the chat model, it has an avatar ID, but it does not have the avatar image, the avatar name. It has a chat ID, but I don't know what the last chat message is. So I think a junior developer will get kind of stuck here, and they might wonder, well, maybe I need to change my chat model so that it always has the avatar information inside it as well. You could go down that approach, but that's not going to be super scalable. Instead, what we want to do is take the avatar ID, and when this screen loads, we go and we fetch the avatar, and we also get an avatar model. Remember, we created an avatar model a while back? So we want to load up one of these when the cell comes on the screen. And we want to do it basically lazy loading so that as each cell comes on the screen, we load it. So if we had 1,000 cells, we're only going to load the avatars as they come onto the screen rather than loading 1,000 preemptively. So there's a couple different ways to do that in SwiftUI, but I'm going to show you guys basically what I find has been the simplest approach. And what that basically is putting a wrapper over the UI. So right now we have a UI layer, And this is just dumb synchronous data. There's no loading that I'm doing in these cells. So the first layer of all of my UI is always just synchronous code. So I have the data, strings, booleans, and I'm never going to do any loading. But now I'm going to build a wrapper around this cell that will do the loading and then inject the data that it loads. I hope that makes sense. I think it'll make more sense as we actually go and do it. So let's go and I'm going to right click and create a new file from template. And I'm going to basically call this the same thing as the previous cell. Let's call this the ChatRowCellView. I'm just going to call it the view builder. And this will be the wrapper that basically builds the ChatRow cell. This is a technique that I've just fallen into after building enough SwiftUI apps and find that this is by far the easiest approach. There are other approaches to doing this. Let's go ahead and undo the chat cell for a second on the chats view so that we can get this compiling. And let's jump into our builder. So now that we have this builder is going to be an implementation of the ChatRow cell. So when we built the ChatRow cell, we used primitive types, strings and booleans, and we kind of had it so that it was not coupled to any specific screen. But now that we're loading data, the data obviously has to be coupled to this implementation of the cell. So it's okay in this builder now to actually use the data models that are specific for this screen. So when we are on the chats view, we're looping on these chat models, and then we're going to inject one into the cell, right? We're looping on each chat. So this cell will get initialized with a chat of type chat model, and we'll set it equal to the mock for now. We made those mocks in the last video. And then let's put on the screen here our cell. Let's do a ChatRowCellView, Option Enter, triple click, Control M. Again, we don't have the data yet. So how are we going to load the data? Well, when this cell appears, you can use an onAppear. Let's go ahead and run a function to get the avatar. Just so that this compiles, let's go ahead and put nil for all these values for 1 second. False. So when this cell appears, let's go ahead and fetch the data. So we're going to fetch the data. I don't have that function yet, but then we're going to set it at the top. So we'll create an @state private var. Let's call this the avatar of type avatar model. We'll start it equal to nil. And we know that this is redundant, so we can just put as an optional. So now when this cell appears, we want to run a function to get the avatar. So we'll set avatar equal to, and then we don't have a function, so we need to call get avatar is what we need here. Now I could create a function down here called get avatar and have this return a avatar model. But if we think ahead, later in this course, when we actually go and we build out all of our backend and our data managers, we're going to have some method to go and fetch the avatar from the backend. So the method to get an avatar is going to be within the data manager or the avatar service that we create later on. Now, we're loading the avatar, but I don't want to couple this cell to the avatar service. So I don't want to have to pass in whatever that is going to be. Instead, I want to just pass in some function that returns an avatar model. So in the initializer, let's pass in a function called getAvatar. That is a function that returns an avatar model. So we'll pass one in when we create the cell. So for example, as I create the view builder, we'll pass in the chat, and then we'll call getAvatar. And so here I'll have to put a function. The function might return the mock avatar, for example. And then now that I have the avatar, it should work on the screen. Let's put here the avatar.profile image name as well as the avatar.name. And that's working. Now when we do this, we're going to actually be fetching the avatar from the backend. So if you've ever built an app before, you know that that is an asynchronous process. And this is a synchronous function. So let's actually change this function to be an async function. So it's an asynchronous function that returns an avatar. onAppear does not support Swift concurrency. So let's change this to a task, and then we're going to need to await the result. All right, I will challenge you guys now to finish this where we are going to need to fetch a chat message as well. So just like we fetched the avatar, go ahead and add a fetch for fetching the chat message. The last chat message is what it's called. So pause the video, otherwise I'm going to go and do it now. We're going to do the exact same thing, and let's just call this last chat message of type chat message model, sorry. I'm going to do the exact same thing. We'll add another task. I'm making it 2 separate tasks so that these happen independently. We could use async let or something like that, but it's actually just way easier, I find, to just make 2 tasks. This way, if this one fails, it has nothing to do with this one, and vice versa. The last chat message will be equal to a function called getLastChatMessage. And let's add that up here. Copy this, paste it up here. So now when I create a chat builder, we're going to need to pass in the chat. The getAvatar will return a mock, and then for the last chat message, we'll return a mock as well. This needs to return a chat message model. There we go. And as we're creating this, I'm thinking out loud here. What happens in the case where we go to fetch the avatar, but it fails? Well, this function right now has to return successful avatar every time. So if it fails, maybe we just return nil from the function. So we'll just make these optional in case they return nil. Down here, we're going to have the last chat message dot content. And then lastly, we need to determine whether or not this user has a new chat. So inside the last chat message, inside the chat message model, we have this seen by IDs array. And we want to determine if the current user ID is inside this array. So let's actually add that logic within the model itself so that we could reuse it if we use this on multiple screens. So down here, I'm just going to, let's do it before our mocks. Let's create a variable and let's just say has been seen by current user of type bool. Firstly, let's say guard let seen by IDs, else return true. So let's make sure that there is an array here and it's not nil. If it's nil, we can probably assume that nobody has seen it yet. That's why there is no array. So then nobody has seen it. So we'll return false because nobody has seen it yet. Now, if it has been seen, we want to return if the seen by IDs dot contains the current user ID. And we don't have that in this model. And I don't want to couple my chat message to the current user's ID. So let's change this to a function and it says has been seen by, and let's pass in a user ID of type string, and this will return a Boolean. Let's pass in the user ID. So if the user ID is in the seen by array, then it will return true, meaning the user has seen this. If not, return false. User has not seen it. Now let's go back to our chat, and we should call last chat message dot has been seen by user ID, and we need the current user's ID, which we do not have right now. So let's also just pass in here. Let's pass in current user ID of type string, and we'll make it optional in case for some weird reason there is none, and we'll just set it equal to a blank string for now. And we'll pass this in here. This is optional and this logic is getting confusing, so let's create a private variable here and called has new chat of type bool, and we'll say guard let last chat message, else return false. Let's make sure that we have this last chat message loaded, otherwise we definitely don't want to put the little tag on the screen. And then we'll say here, let's also say guard let current user ID. So if we don't have a current user ID, then we'll also just assume that this should not show on the screen. And then here we'll say return last chat message dot has been seen by current user ID. And this should be a variable, and then we'll paste this in here. This is looking good. The last thing let's do here is a loading state, because these are going to load asynchronously, and we want the loading to be smooth, and we don't want the cell to kind of jank around as the data loads in. Let's go ahead here and let's create a VStack. So we have a couple different previews. On this preview, I'm going to do a try await task.sleep, and let's sleep for seconds. Let's do maybe 5 seconds for each of these. So we can see here what the loading state is going to look like now. So this loading state looks kind of weird, and then it just pops onto the screen. So we are loading these separately, and there's actually 2 different loading states here. So let's actually create 2 states for the load. So let's say here did load avatar of type bool. And the reason I'm doing did load rather than checking if this is successful is because if this loads and this is nil, then if this executes and this returns nil, it's still going to count as finished loading, even if it doesn't actually have data. So we can't just use whether or not there's data here. Let's say did load avatar equals false, and did load chat message of type bool equals false. Let's create a private variable called isLoading of type bool. We'll say if did load avatar and did load chat message, return if both of these are loaded, then isLoading is false. Otherwise, return true. Another way of writing this, I can just put it in parentheses and then say false, otherwise true. And it's basically like if this is true, then return false. If this is false, then return true. So it's really just like the opposite of what the result of this is. So we could just do the exclamation mark and say not the result of both of those. This is really cool code. This is clean Swift code. But actually, I feel like this is going to open us up to bugs more than the previous version, where this is much more readable, especially for people who are less adept in Swift. So I'm going to actually leave it like this, even though we could write better code. I'm going to move this private variable up here as well, put my variables above the body. And now let's just build out the loading state. So for the image looks fine in the loading state. Let's leave that. For the headline, let's say if is loading, let's put maybe just some fake text on the screen. Otherwise, blank. So the is loading state looks like that. And maybe that's too much text, like this. And then I'm also going to do here is loading. Let's do the same thing, otherwise that. And let's make this text a little bit longer. And then if is loading has new chat should just be false, otherwise has new chat. Now lastly, let's put a .redacted modifier on this. And we will say if is loading, let's use the .placeholder, otherwise no redaction. So now we have this redacted state, and then it should load in, but we actually didn't set these to false. So down here, let's go after the avatar function completes, we're going to go did load avatar equals true. And then here we'll do the same thing for did load chat message. And that looks much better. I think it's going to be a smoother loading experience when we actually go get to it. The last thing I'll do is actually just put a third cell on the screen here. And this time I'll just return nil for both of these. We don't actually need these keywords here. I can just remove these keywords. So this is the final state we have now, where if it is actually nil for both of these, nothing going to display in the cell. That does not look great to me. So let's go ahead and update the subheadline to actually just say an error if nothing actually loads. This way is just a little bit of feedback to the user for the very edge case chance that nothing works. So I'll have a private variable. Let's call this the subheadline of type string, or it's an optional string. And let's take this logic here and paste it up here. So firstly, we'll say if is loading, return this string. And then if it's not loading, let's check if So if loading is false, we know that both of the methods have finished completing. So if it is not loading, we should now check if avatar is equal to nil and last chat message is equal to nil. If both of them are nil, then let's just return error loading data. And then lastly, let's just return the last chat message.content. Let's put the subheadline on the screen here. This error should basically never happen, but at least now we have some error state for the edge case. Maybe we'll just put error so it's even less. That looks fine to me. If this started happening a lot in my app, obviously we need to refactor something because this should be like a very much an edge case. Lastly, let's jump back to the chats view. Command Shift O, chats view. Let's put on the screen a ChatRowCellView builder. Option Enter to get the full completion. Triple click Control M. Some of these at states should not be coming through. These are private. I don't know why they're coming through the initializer. Let's delete these 4 here. We haven't built our user model yet, so we don't have a current user ID. So let's just put it nil for now. And we'll do a fix me, add, let's do CUID, current user ID. This will be the chat that we are looping on. And then we have a method here. I'm going to open the brackets and click enter, and then open the brackets and click enter. Get avatar. We don't actually have the method yet, but let's actually just copy the code from our preview. This code here, we'll do it here, and we'll just do maybe 1 second. I'll do the same thing for the fetch of the chat message for now. Let's load up the preview. Swiftland is giving us this warning for the fix me. That's probably good, but we're going to actually have a lot of code before we actually fix this. So let's just remove the fix me. Add CUID, that's fine. We need to fix these two anyway. We have that extra padding, so let's actually just remove list row formatting. We have these nice loading states. That looks pretty smooth to me. Let's check it out one more time. That looks pretty good. Snaps right in. And then before the list row formatting, let's add any button. And here again, we'll use our highlight. And so we'll have some action. So we should be able to click and highlight on these now, which looks nice. I love how we're reusing these components already across the application. That's all for this video. Let's wrap it up with Option Command C. Let's go ahead and make this a feature. We'll call this the ChatRowCellView. Stage it, commit it, push it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.